Episode 125, Joshua David Bellin. Good morrow, and welcome back to the Realm. I'm author J.V. Hilliard, and today on the Realm, we have our own Indiana Jones. As many of you know, Indy was a professor and an adventurer, and here we've got our own professor who writes adventure novels. We're looking forward to it, so if you like Indy and you like adventure novels, you're going to like our next guest. Josh, welcome to the Realm.
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me.
My pleasure, man. It was nice to meet you a few weeks back at the convention that we were actually. It was a sort of a library convention, and it was good to meet another Pittsburgh author. So thanks for joining the Realm, and I'm sure that our viewers will like hearing a little bit about you and your work. So thanks for coming on.
Sure, thanks for having me.
So what I found interesting about your stuff as I started to read not only your work but also a little bit about you. Is that you started writing really young. I'm one of those guys that got pulled in because of COVID and there was nothing else to do. And I was like, man, I'll kick this off the bucket list. But this is something you wanted to do since you were a wee lad. Is that true?
Oh, that's totally true. I always tell people that the first novel I wrote was when I was 8, which is actually the first novel that I tried to write. I mean, I had it in my mind that it was a novel, right? I had this idea. This was a long time ago. I still had a manual typewriter, right? It was my mom's manual typewriter. Computers, at least personal computers, didn't exist. So I'm punching away on the keyboard. I didn't know what I was doing. And I got about a page done. And then, I was 8 years old. I gave up. I couldn't go any further, but I still have that. My mom preserved that piece of paper. So I still
that's cool. You got to hang
really
that
cool
up somewhere, man.
Yeah, I got it around somewhere. I'll track it down. Yeah, it's really a neat image. But yeah, but that was the thing. That was when it started. I just wanted to do it. I wanted to be a writer from way back when.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit, because one of the things that I haven't had on this show, if you can believe this or not, we've done about 35 different interviews since I started the Realm. The one thing that I haven't had on the show yet is a professor. But in this case, it sounds to me like that's a pretty cool little background for what you do. Tell everybody what you profess and how long you've been doing it.
Well, I profess to profess English. And
it's good fit for what you do, right?
Yeah. I've been doing it for over 20 years now. I've been at the same place, LaRoche University in Pittsburgh. So I teach writing and I teach literature. So it's perfect. And I like teaching both kinds of classes, but I especially like teaching writing because it keeps me on my toes as a writer. It reminds me of why I write and why I like writing. And it also, I learn a lot, from about my own writing from working with students. And it also means that there's a fair amount of free time, quite frankly, summers. So, plenty of time to write. So that always is advantageous.
Did you find that one of the advantages that you've had from being a professor, not just on the time stuff, but did that help you get published? And did you find that because you're writing all the time and it was more muscle memory for you and you're reading and editing, did you feel like that was as an asset to you as you went through the publication process?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, I started out, before I started writing fiction, I published like academic prose, articles, and I had a couple academic books out there, one of them about monster movies. So what it meant was that I was always writing, and I had some experience in the publishing industry. I was kind of comfortable. I knew my way around, writing a cover letter and that sort of thing, right? So that helped, I think.
Well, one of the things I've noticed about your work, you write in sci-fi, you write in fantasy, you've got a thriller, suspense, a horror book. I mean, it's your multi-genre. Do you find that as an advantage? Is that a way for you to kind of express yourself in a different way? Or do you find that as a disadvantage when you're kind of jumping from various customers to customers that might not read across genre like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hope that readers find me and maybe if they like a book that I wrote in sci-fi, maybe if the next one that comes out is a little bit more leaning toward fantasy, they might take a chance on it. But from my perspective, it's really just that I'm sort of restless as a writer. I'm always trying to find something new and interesting. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. I love horror. I love all speculative genres. I read them all and I write them all. And so I admire people like yourself who they have one thing they do and they do it, right? For me, it's like, no, I've done this for a while. Now let's try something new, right? I'm like a kid, who's looking for some new toy to play with or something.
Yeah. So we're both Pittsburghers, and I know one of your novels, Myriad, is set in the city. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I know that some authors, you're told you write what you know and things like that. But I would find if I was writing a novel in the city, I would be super specific about things.
Hmm.
Did you find that as challenging, or was it exciting that you can memorialize things that you know real well in the book and make it part of the plot? I mean, why did you choose to set the novel in Pittsburgh?
That's a great question. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I chose it partly because of the idea that for me, I guess as a sci-fi writer, I find that I need to know where the story is going to take place before I can know what's going to take place. So because of that, even if I'm writing a place that's not a real place, I like to model it on a real place, something that I know pretty intimately so that I can sort of in my mind physically move around in it. So Pittsburgh was a natural for me, especially since in this case, I was writing something that was sci-fi thriller, a little bit of noir kind of a feel to it. Because Pittsburgh, as you know, it's kind of like a time travel-y city, right? There's places that seem like they're 150 years old and other places that seem brand new and glistening and shining and almost futuristic. So it gave me an opportunity to sort of think about, well, what are the places in this city of mine that would best carry the story? And so I had a blast just thinking about all of these places, either places that I love, places that I know well, where I was like, yeah, I'm going to set a scene there. I guess another thing I would say is that it gave me a chance to make Pittsburgh cool. A lot of people think that Pittsburgh isn't cool, right? It's this old city, Pittsburgh. What has Pittsburgh got going for it? But with the sci-fi time travel angle, it gave me a chance to make it cool.
I like going back to what you said earlier too, because when you write fantasy or sci-fi, you have to ground it in something real,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so that it's when people suspend their disbelief, they can follow along. I want to get back to the original question I asked, which was, I know you've got the survival colony novels, and I know you got the sort of sci-fi, the deep space stuff with Free Fall. I know you've got your eco system cycle, and you've got Myriad. They all come from different places, and I'm not going to ask you to pick a favorite child, but I'm going to ask you, one, what's your favorite genre to write in of those that you write? And two, do you have a favorite genre just to read in?
Okay, so let's start with the first question. When I was a kid, I read almost exclusively epic fantasy. That was just it for me. I mean, I started with Tolkien and then just went from there, right? And I was
Sounds
reading
like me.
Stephen
Yeah.
Donaldson, Anne McCaffrey. I mean, you name it, the classics. But as I got older, I think I wanted to be grounded a little bit more in things that were real, possible, plausible, right? Maybe I became more practical or pragmatic. I started leaning towards sci-fi, which is mostly what I read now. So I enjoy writing sci-fi as well as reading it. But so that's one of the reasons that I like both Myriad and the ecosystem novels. The ecosystem novels are very different from Myriad. Myriad, time travel thriller. Ecosystem novels are these future Earth, sort of near future Earth, when the physical environment has become this planetary super predator, sort of a single sentience called the ecosystem.
The Earth fights back, right?
Yeah, right. And it ended up being a 5-book series, right? And so same thing with Myriad. Myriad is sci-fi, but at the same time, it's a thriller, it's a murder mystery, it's, as I said, it's noir. So I think that these days I like sci-fi, but I also like to find things that are a little bit hybrid, where I'm dabbling in multiple genres at once.
That's cool. That's cool. And I know those are your most recent works, but what's next for you? What's next for Josh? I mean, what are we going to expect in the next year or so?
So, well, I hope it's in the next year or so, but the one that I'm working on now, and the one that my current editor is excited about, it's called Botany, but it's not a book about plants. It's an outer space adventure set on a planet that's called Botany, that's kind of modeled on the Botany Bay.
Oh, you Star Trek, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I'm enjoying the idea of going from Earth-based sci-fi, which is what Myriad is, to going to something that's set out in outer space.
Yeah, super, super cool. I'm looking forward to that one. One final question before we get into our lightning round. You're one of the few folks I've worked with on the show that have an agent. Was that something that really helped you in terms of sales or marketing or all of the above? Or did you feel it was, to some degree optional? I think a lot of our viewers are authors too, and some go back and forth on finding the right kind of representation. Is it worth it? Was it worth it? Would you do it again? Are you doing it now?
So for me, it was definitely worth it, but it's one of those things where I try not to dictate to anybody, right? There's a lot of chatter out there. Oh, indie publishing is the only way to go. Traditional publishing is the only way to go. I just don't buy it. Everybody has different needs and different desires and different visions for themselves and a different path. I do a mix, right? Some of my stuff is self-published, some of it is traditionally published. My agent has always been very supportive. She's a lawyer, which helps because when it comes to contracts, she knows that field cold. So I think that she's been very helpful to me. But at the same time, to go back to what I said earlier, I would say that each writer has to find what works best for them, right?
Well, hey, look, we only have a few minutes left. We do this with every one of our guests. We have a 3 or 4 question lightning round. So I'm going to throw a couple of ideas at you and just answer them as quickly as you can, whatever comes to mind. But be honest about it. Let's start with that and let me know when you're ready.
All right. Yeah. Fire away.
Right, so, hey, look, I know you're a fan of scary monsters. What is your favorite scary monster?
My favorite scary monster would be the alien from the Aliens franchise.
Great
Saw
choice.
the first one in '79, scared the can't say it on air out of me, and I have just always thought it was such an amazing concept.
All right, so I'm going to take a little bit of a spin off of that. So in your novels, it doesn't have to be a monster, but what was your scariest for you? One of your favorite monsters or villains, if not a monster, within the realm of Josh's books?
Okay, that's a good question. In the survival colony novels, there are these creatures called Scaldi, and they are body snatchers. I've always loved the whole idea of body snatchers. And so that's what the Scaldi do. They take over human bodies, they consume them, and then kind of wear their skins. And they are, trust me, if you read those novels, they are scary.
So I'm glad you said that, because that might have been my favorite one from your work as well. And last question, we always have a debate among our viewership of what's better, sci-fi or fantasy. And I think I got your answer anyway, but I'm going to ask the question because if I don't, I'm going to get crap about it on social media. So if you had to choose sci-fi or fantasy, what would it be?
These days I would choose sci-fi, but man, fantasy is awesome too, right? I mean, and so much sci-fi, let's be perfectly honest, might as well just be called fantasy, right? I mean, there's hard sci-fi, which I don't do, right? Those of us who are doing a softer sci-fi, right, without the real technical explanations as to how everything works out, are we writing sci-fi or are we writing fantasy with some scientific elements in it? You choose. So fantasy is all right by me.
Well, hey, Josh, again, thanks for being in the realm today. We appreciate your time and good luck with the launch of your new stuff.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
So how about this? Here's a guy that evokes Star Trek with botany and botany, the USS Botany Bay, and then ends the show by telling me he has his own skin stealer in his own series. Obviously, like the guy, we're on the same page. I hope you guys do too. Check out his work when you have a chance. And also, July 10th of 2023, my new novel, The Trillias Gambit, launches. Go out and get that at your favorite bookstore. Download it from Amazon. Listen to it on Audible or any of those distribution channels. And of course, you can get your ebook from about 20 different channels there too. Looking forward to catching you on the road in Raleigh when I visit GalaxyCon at the end of July, and then I'll see everybody in Columbus for the next GalaxyCon in November. Again, thank you very much for joining me on The Realm today, and may your gods go with you.